Welcome to the Future Hospitality Summit podcast. For more information, visit www.futurehospitalitysummit.com.
Welcome everyone to another podcast in our Future Hospitality Summit series, the podcast that shines a light on all things hospitality investment related to the GCC. I'm Matthew Weihs, I'm the Managing Director of The Bench, and today I'm with Tim Cordon, Senior Area Vice President of Middle East and Africa for Radisson. Hi, Tim.
Hi, good to be back on with you, Matt.
Yeah, nice to see you again. We're going to be talking operations and human resources a bit. So first off, I don't want to dwell on it. What, if anything, from the pandemic, it was a tough old time, was the biggest surprise to you during that period?
Well, there were many surprises, I suppose, but during the pandemic, we kept using this phrase, didn't we? The new normal, and now it's just normal. So a lot of things that happened during the pandemic, like the adoption of this type of call, for example, or the acceleration in the adoption of this type of call, has become completely normal now. So I have to sort of cast my mind back a little bit and think, what's changed? And in terms of human capital specifically, a lot, I would say. I think globally, we've seen a divergence of people's employment wants and needs. And in our industry, we've seen a lot of people either leaving the industry or we're struggling to attract people back to our industry. I think that's less of an issue in the GCC, in the Middle East, in our part of the world. But it's certainly been pretty critical. We're both British, so we both know what's happening in the UK, and it's been exacerbated by Brexit. But that's been a really tough situation, and I think that's something that we have seen here, less harsh, but it's still an issue. So it's never been more important to make sure that your brands, your hotels, and our industry as a whole is as attractive as possible to the next generation. And I think we've got a lot to shout about there that we don't talk about loudly enough on a regular basis.
Now, I was going to ask at the outset what the sort of role of within Radisson is for you, but I suppose what I'm trying to get at is what has actually changed in that role for you in this particular, with after COVID or through COVID. Has it actually sort of adapted your role? Has it actually moved it on to be doing certain things that were never there before?
I'm not sure it's fundamentally changed it. I mean, the fundamentals of the industry haven't changed. We're still there to look after people. We're still there to provide a wonderful experience. We're still there to try and provide the great hospitality, all the stuff that we've been doing for a long time. And that hasn't changed. Perhaps the way that we do it, some levers have moved, but otherwise, I think there's a lot that's also stayed the same. And in terms of my role, I think if anything, if it's possible, people have become even more important than they ever have been. And I would always have put that right at the top of the list anyway. Since the pandemic, I think it's probably right at the top of the list with a couple of asterisks by it. That having a great team around you, retaining great talent, developing talent, particularly attracting new talent, and the responsibility that leaders have in our industry is now even greater in terms of what we give back to the industry and how we're able to develop and nurture people through our businesses.
Well, let's get stuck into that, because I was talking to Guy Hutchinson earlier this week, CEO of Ratana, and he really said, look, actually the bounce back to high performance was really quick for the region. We were very lucky, but it now provides a different challenge, which is very much around expanding the organization and the human capital. So how are you addressing this? What HR related activities are you doing specifically to address this?
Yeah, there's a number of things. Let me talk about a kind of a broad overview, and then I want to focus on a couple of specific examples. So a broad overview, I think we're trying to change the way that we address the market and try and change how our industry is perceived a little bit to potential employees, potential people who are looking, young people who are looking to start a career and thinking, where am I going to go? What industry am I going to go into? And particularly in this part of the world, local talent has traditionally not chosen hospitality in big numbers. And yet we can offer, great working hours, particularly in today's world where great working hours are by no means Monday to Friday 9 to 5 anymore, or Sunday to Thursday 9 to 5. We are part of the gig economy. We can offer different working hours to suit different people, and the technology that we have at our fingertips now enables us to have a much more flexible approach than the old-fashioned rota that I certainly remember from my early days. And the swapping shifts is something that's done online. You can trade your shifts and so on. So I think the ability to do that has not been well explained to the workforce, and we haven't positioned ourselves particularly well away from the traditional perception of long hours, unsociable hours, hard work, low pay. And I don't think that's really true anymore, compared to other industries which don't suffer the same perception problems that we do. So that's one of the things that we've been focusing on in terms of our messaging and how we address the market. But specifically, if we look at Saudi Arabia, that's our biggest expansion market, as it is for most people right now in the Middle East. We've got about 45 hotels there today, either open or very close to being opening in the next sort of couple of years. So that gives us a huge challenge. How do we fill those opening hotels with great people who really want to work in hospitality, and also respect that we're doing so in a country which has a huge population, and there's a lot of pressure, rightly, to say that we should be addressing Saudi talent. So, for example, we launched just last week, actually, a program we've been working very closely with the Saudi Ministry of Tourism on, called ABJAD. Now, that stands for a brilliant journey of advanced development. Okay. It's also, I'm told anyway, my Arabic's terrible, but Abjad also means something similar in Arabic. So, and what that does is a program that focuses specifically on Saudi talent, young Saudi individuals coming into hospitality, picking them up and saying, this is a journey for your career, and we're going to support you through these pillars all the way along, as part of Radisson Hotel Group and sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism. So that's something we're doing in Saudi. We also have something here close to home in Dubai, where I'm sitting, where we're working very closely with Dubai College of Tourism on an internship program into our hotels to give people real life exposure in our businesses to understand how we can better facilitate as many of those Dubai College of Tourism people into hospitality, into hotels actually, as opposed to leaving the industry after they're qualified.
And are you seeing that the old employment is coming back, or is it are you getting fresh blood? What are you finding with your efforts?
A bit of both, actually. It's a mix. So during the pandemic, necessarily the workforce did reduce. I think everybody, if anyone in the hotel sector says that didn't happen, then that's interesting.
Well, that is interesting.
I think we should be honest and say that, whether that was through not recruiting or extended holidays or whatever tactics we used at the time, we then ended up with a very quick spike, a business return very quickly, which was great, but then a gap. We needed people to help serve business. And what we've seen is a lot of people have returned. We've been quite fortunate that we have traditionally a pretty high level of loyalty. So a lot of our guys returned straight back to the hotels. But we have so that's one thing. We also saw people coming into our businesses from other businesses, people who have been working for themselves, perhaps, not necessarily in line level positions. But in my office, for example, we have people coming in from digital marketing, never worked in a hotel, and all of a sudden interested to work in our industry and some of the roles that we're developing in. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix.
I'm probably asking you to repeat something, but the theme of the conference is leading the change. How do you feel Radisson yourself are doing that when it comes to operational initiatives? And
Yeah.
do tell me that you've just told me the two jewels in the crown beforehand, if that is the case. But if there is a way that you think you're differentiating yourself in such a competitive market, I guess, at the moment.
Yeah, I with the bracket of human capital and people development, I think I've spoken a little bit about that. So what I'd perhaps turn to as a related topic is how we use technology. If we're honest, as a sector, an industry, hotels and hospitality have been a little bit slow in the adoption of tech. Even the airlines are miles ahead of us. So I think that's a huge opportunity for us. And what we've done is we've developed, we've adopted some great systems from third-party vendors, and we've implemented those in a way that gives us the ability to have flexible staffing, for example. I did touch on that earlier, and staff can request, and it's almost like a marketplace for shifts. And I think that's a much more dynamic way of doing things, and a much more intuitive way of doing things, particularly for a younger generation than as I already said, the timesheets or whatever we used to do many years ago. On top of that, we've also developed our own PMS, POS, sales and catering suite called Emma. So we're stepping away from the traditional Opera, Micros Fidelio environment, and that's great. But one of the key benefits of doing that is that now when we want to roll out some new technology, and we have a whole raft of them coming under a heading of Radisson Plus, as we call it, we can develop our own programming interfaces with our own POS to be able to interface to that. So things like seamless online check-in, check-out, are very straightforward for us to roll out across the estate of hotels, as well as communication with guests, communication with staff. Then becomes something that's all done very, very simply through the mobile phone. I think that helps not only provide a wonderful guest experience and something that's much more is expected these days from every other part of your travel journey is done like that. But also for our teams, that they're able to use their phone to clock in and out, to monitor what they're doing, their working, their communication with their supervisors, their communication with their colleagues, and even when they're on a job to flag up potential issues. Maintenance needs here's a photo of that. And it goes straight to the maintenance team to say, oh, okay, that's logged the job, that we need to go and fix it. And having all your housekeeping team able to quickly take a photo and send it whilst they're in a room is far more efficient than the supervisor writing it down.
Having to come around and check it and blah, blah, blah.
And none of this is earth-shattering. We're not breaking new ground here in terms of the technological capability, but the application of it is quite new, I guess.
And you mentioned Riyadh. You mentioned Saudi, obviously, and the work there that you're doing. You've just recently opened an office in Riyadh. What does this mean for Radisson? You mentioned 45 hotels there and thereabouts. What's the goal? Where do you see this going?
I think right now, Saudi is one of the most exciting hotel markets globally. I can't think of another example of a country that's been pretty much locked up for the last 4 or 5 decades, and is now all of a sudden not just opening its doors, but throwing them wide open and saying we want to embrace tourism and hospitality. And of course, there's an enormous will behind that, and an enormous amount of money behind it to support the infrastructure required. And I think if you believe in Vision 2030, as I do, then I think you have to believe there's an enormous opportunity for additional hotels and hospitality businesses. So I think Saudi is one of the countries, like India, for example, where we have 100 hotels operational today. Saudi could be that kind of nature. I don't know if we'll get to 100, but that's a great aspirational target, in my view, to have for the next 5 years. Because there are so many parts of Saudi Arabia which are completely unexplored. So many provinces which are underserved from a hospitality point of view, that I have to believe those examples are there and those opportunities are there. So really, putting the office into Riyadh was a very kind of straightforward decision when you consider the size of the business we run there today. And we already had a team of people in Saudi.
Yeah.
So pulling those people together under one entity made sense regardless. But then also we look at the future, and I think it was time for us to commit.
So finally, we're a few weeks away from the Future Hospitality Summit, and you're part of the judging panel for the Sustainable Hospitality Challenge. What does your role play in Radisson as part of the commitments to sustainability, and how do you act it out, I guess, as a figurehead and leader?
Radisson are in I think, quite a special position when it comes to this topic, because our roots are originally Scandinavian. We came from Scandinavian countries, and Scandinavia has always been historically kind of a leading part of the world when it comes to sustainable practices and sustainable business and business ethics as well. So those measures, those values have always been at the core of our business. So as the importance of sustainability has accelerated, we've been able to accelerate with it perhaps more easily than some other organizations. So now we are, as Radisson Hotel Group, we are one of the founding members, trying to develop a set of hotel sustainability basics. And what we mean by that is that currently today, there is no regulation around hospital or hotel sustainability practices. There's no regulation that says hotels have to have LED lights, for example, or have to have this level of water usage or water saving programs in your hotel, or have to have this certain shower head, or whatever it is. And I think if, as a business, if we say, well, there's no current regulation, and if we remain unregulated, then someone is going to come and regulate us. And wouldn't it be better if we regulate ourselves?
Control of it.
So we've got all of the big hotel groups more or less together now alongside the WTTC, and we're developing, or have developed, a set of hotel sustainability basics, which very clearly sets out, this is the base expectation for any hotel if you want to sign up to this program. And there's nothing there that is particularly difficult to achieve initially, but we see a future there, and it's very clearly mapped out, which does get progressively more difficult in terms of how we, because of course the big issues in the hotels, the simple stuff to solve is to get rid of plastic water bottles and plastic drinking straws, and reduce your water consumption and have low energy lighting and that kind of thing. But I think that's relatively straightforward, and they're the basics. The more complicated things are, how do you install solar? Especially if you're a management company, you don't own the building, what's the case for solar? What's the case for having replacing the chillers to much more low energy, far more efficient chillers in this part of the world where air conditioning is such a big part of the puzzle. So those things are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more meaty, but we're tackling them nonetheless. Working alongside building regulation people like LEED, defining exactly what a sustainable hotel might look like, and we have one in Dubai actually that is LEED certified as a sustainable building, and it's a hotel.
Well, thank you, Tim, and thanks for joining me today, and the wonderful insights. Look forward to seeing you in a few weeks in Dubai, and very best of luck with all the challenges that you face over the next few years.
Pleasure. Good to talk to you, Matt. See you soon.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Future Hospitality Summit podcast. For more information, visit www.futurehospitalitysummit.com.